So you're thinking of moving to Baltimore, Maryland. Well, stay put, because in this video, I'm giving you the 7 things that you're going to have to deal with when you move here. If you can't handle these 7 things, you're going to want to avoid moving here altogether. And you definitely want to stay through the video to number 7 because it's one that you may not have thought about. When you're here, you think about it a lot, but if you're not here, you're not going to think about it. And it may also be one that you're not considering no matter where you're thinking of moving to. If you want to plug it into your head so that it's there, stay put. We'll go through that one along with the other 6 in this video. If this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about eating, sleeping, living, playing, working here in Baltimore, Maryland, go ahead and subscribe and tap the bell for notifications. That way you are the first to know anytime we put out a video. Because if you're thinking about living in Baltimore, you want to think about subscribing and tapping the bell. What's up, Waniacs? My name is Wayne Hitt, and every day my team and I get calls, texts, emails from people just like you that are thinking about moving to Baltimore, Maryland. So if you're looking to move in a month, 6 months, a year, a week, whatever it may be, drop us a line. You can give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email. We will be delighted to help you make a smooth move to Maryland. So let's get into this. The 7 things that you're going to have to deal with when moving to Baltimore. Number 1. And this has to be number 1 because it is in your face today, and that is the weather. I was walking yesterday in 99-degree heat. Now, I love the heat and humidity. I'm kind of a psycho that way. The hotter, the more humid, the better. So if you're like me, you like hot and humid, you're gonna love summer in Baltimore. Now, when I was a kid, we actually had, I am born and raised here. We actually had 4 seasons. We had fall, winter, spring, and summer. These days, it feels like we have winter and summer. Some years worse than others, and some years it's easier. We actually have 4 seasons, but here recently, it's cold and it's hot. I'm not a fan of the cold, but I love the heat. And you may or may not know, with really crazy heat, you can get some really crazy storms. So we had a pretty nasty thunderstorm last night. Thunder, lightning, the whole shebang. No pun intended. Lots of rain. I go outside this morning. There's a couple of trees here or there. There's debris everywhere. Not like a tornado, but it gets a little crazy sometimes. And we do have some severe weather like hurricanes. Speaking of crazy storms, when I was younger, we did have a hurricane come right up the Chesapeake Bay, and that was interesting. So yeah, we can get some pretty crazy weather. We can also, on the flip side of things, when we talk about cold, we can get snowstorms. I mean, we've had feet of snow here before, so it's just something to be mindful of. I love the heat. We're in the thick of the heat right now, but if you can't handle some extremes at times, something to consider. All right, number 2, the second thing that you might want to consider before moving here. If you can't handle it, again, avoid it. Although I'd love to see it here. The second thing we're going to talk about is the traffic. And again, this is really in your face these days because we had a very unfortunate situation where we lost an integral part of our traffic, or our roadway infrastructure, and that's the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Now, with that bridge down, traffic has been a nightmare. What has normally taken me 20 minutes to get from point A to point B in certain parts of the city will now take me 40. So I just plan accordingly. Now, the cool thing is we have Interstate 95, we have a beltway system, I-695, we have I-70, we have I-295 that gets us from Baltimore to DC. The 95 actually, that runs up and down the East Coast, so a lot of people are familiar with that. We have I-83, which is kind of a shorter interconnector from the city to the county. We have a lot of ways to get around. But, like I said, I am born and raised here. I've been here my entire life, and it seems the beltway system 695 is just always a pain in the butt. So again, you just have to be mindful of rush hour. If you can avoid it, avoid it. But if you're in it, you're in it. Sometimes it sucks. All right, that leads us to number 3 on the list, and that is taxes. I guess we can sum it up with taxes, fees, cost of living, whatever we want to label this. Baltimore City in particular is not cheap to live in. Our tax rate is double some of our neighboring counties. Now, the way that I get around that is I absolutely use every square inch of this city. I'm able to walk to the grocery store. My daughter walks to school. My wife walks to work. We're in the middle of a pretty awesome hustle and bustle, nightlife, entertainment kind of spot. So day in and day out, we really do use a lot of the city for what it has to offer. It's not something where I'm paying to live here and I have to drive everywhere to really get enjoyment out of it or to really soak in everything that it has to offer. I can soak in everything that this really cool city has to offer without moving the car, all within my own neighborhood if I wanted to, or I can take a scooter or hop in an Uber or hop on my one wheel or, jet 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there, and I'm somewhere else having a good time. Baltimore has a lot of neighborhoods. They all have their own characteristics. They're really cool. So while it does cost more to live here in the city than some neighboring counties, not to mention there are other fees that drive me nuts where we'll get into in another video, I'm still able to soak in every cool part that my neighborhood has to offer, from, like I said, the grocery to the nightlife to the parks to the playgrounds, the schools, the shopping district, working, living, playing, eating, everything that I mentioned in the beginning. We're doing it all right out of our front door. So if you're able to use all of the city, I think it's worth it. Now, these are in no particular order, except the weather and traffic were kind of in my face yesterday. So I started it off with them. But anyway, let's move on to number 4. The fourth thing that you're going to have to deal with when moving here is the school system. Now, I'm speaking from experience. My wife is a teacher. I also went through the Baltimore City school system myself. My daughter went from together 3 through 8th grade Baltimore City system. And while we collectively spend the most money per pupil as I think any system in the nation, and we have a new program that we are funding that is going to be put into place. I think it's being phased in within these 10 years. I'm not going to get into that. We're making waves, we're making changes, but it's something to consider. Because if you look up the stats online, Baltimore City school system, it doesn't get great reviews. Again, with all of the many neighborhoods in Baltimore, there are fantastic schools in certain parts of the city. I happen to live in an area where we are surrounded by 3 fantastic schools, with one of them being one of the best in the city. If it's not number 1, it's number 2, because it's always going back and forth between this one and another one. There are also certain neighborhoods in Baltimore City that families will move to because they want to put their kids in certain schools that have great reviews. And that's an option. Okay, the 5th thing that you're going to have to think about prior to moving here, and you're probably wondering, Wayne, I've heard of Baltimore, why haven't you mentioned this yet? And it is the crime. Now, if you look us up on a national stage, we're not looking too hot. On the flip side, we have made major improvements in crime, and those stats are available as well, like 30 percentile ranges of drops in crime, which is great. We had some folks in office that weren't really prosecuting certain crimes and things got a little out of hand. It seems we put a lid on that to a degree, so we're making progress. But with any big city in the country, you're going to deal with crime. And I'm not going to get into all the crime stats. I'll do separate videos on all these topics where we can dig a little deeper. I just want to get these 7 out there and scratch the surface. And I'll go into detail on all 7 of these and more in future videos, but I just wanted to get these 7 out initially and just have a quick chat about them. So the 6th thing you're going to have to consider before moving to Baltimore, and again, you're going to have to deal with it if this is your bag, public transportation. Now, thankfully, because of Uber and Lyft and scooters and those types of things, it's easier, it's more fun. But if you are stuck to the bus system, or we have a light rail system here, we're also working on a red line, which has been in the works for a while, but now it looks like it may actually be pushed through. It's not a New York subway. We don't have the T like Boston has. Look, I'm giving you the nitty gritty. One thing you'll get here on the channel is the good, bad, and the ugly. I'm not here to sugarcoat anything. I am born and raised here. I've lived here my entire life. I will give you the good, bad, and the ugly. I've lived the good, bad, and the ugly. There's a lot of good, but I'm still gonna give you the bad and the ugly. So yeah, the public transportation system isn't the greatest. I know some folks who come into work and they're taking 2 and 3 buses through transfers and all that, and if one bus is late, then it's just a mess. But again, like everything else I've said in this video, we are making improvements. But you have to consider it. While we're at it, if you're looking to make a move here, drop a comment down below. Ask any question that you may have. You can also call, text, shoot me an email, and we can discuss anything that's on your mind. Or I can even make a video about a certain topic that you'd like to hear about. All of my information is in the description below. I'm at this 8 days a week, so you can hit me up at any time. All right, you've hung in, you've hung on. Now for number 7. The 7th thing that you're gonna have to deal with when you move to Baltimore, and that is, I'm not gonna do a drum roll, parking. Now, as I mentioned, Baltimore has a ton of neighborhoods. I believe there's 289 neighborhoods in Baltimore. 288 and 259 are registered. If you look up online, it'll say over 250. I'm pretty sure it's 288, 259. I think those are the numbers. I can walk out on my front street, do a 360, and rattle off 10 neighborhoods off the top of my head. I say that because each neighborhood has different parking situations. Some areas are much more dense and some are a little more open. However, there are also some areas that have parking by permit only. Some areas have public garages. Some areas have garages you can pay to park in. Some areas, when you're living on one block, there may not be houses across the street, so that gives you more parking. There are some areas, no matter how dense they are, there are some tricks of the trade where you can usually find a parking spot. But I'm telling you now, in some places, parking just sucks. And some folks will only buy a house if it has a parking pad in the back. We've taken some of our patios and made them parking pads so we can just pull our car into the back of the house. Some new houses that are going up, they've got garages, they've got pads in place, no big deal there. But yes, some folks will only buy a house here if they know they can get parking. Some folks will only buy a house here if it's in a permit zone because they know only permit holders can park there. And some folks want to avoid permit zones because they don't want to deal with the logistics of permitting and having a pass and all that kinds of stuff. Again, there's ways around it, but as I've been saying, something to consider. So there you have it, the 7 things that you're going to want to consider prior to moving to Baltimore. If you can't handle those 7 things, you may want to avoid coming here altogether. I'd love to see you here, but I get it. We've covered a ton in today's video, but there's still so much more that I feel you need to know about my hometown and its surrounding counties. So stay tuned as I continue to pump out videos giving you the best of the best and the worst of the worst when it comes to moving to and living in Baltimore, Maryland. And with that, Waniacs, I'll see you on the next one.